It was the year 1971. The Vietnam War was still raging, and across America, families were glued to their televisions, every night searching for a moment of escape. On a quiet Wednesday evening, The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson began like any other, filled with laughter, charm, and the familiar comfort of Johnny's quick wit. But that night, something different was about to happen. Midway through the show, Johnny held up a small folded piece of paper and said, softly, "I received a letter I think everyone needs to hear." The audience, expecting another joke or fan message, fell quiet. He looked down at the note, his expression changing from playful to solemn. The studio lights seemed dimmer. The energy shifted. He began reading. "Dear Mr. Carson," the letter started, "my name is Private Daniel Morris, and I'm writing this from a tent somewhere in Vietnam. Every night when we can catch a signal, we watch you. You make us laugh when the world feels too heavy." Johnny paused, his voice slightly unsteady. You could hear a pin drop. The letter continued, "Last week, one of my best friends didn't make it home from patrol. That night, we watched your show, and for half an hour, we forgot the war." Johnny's eyes lifted to the audience, then back to the paper. He took a deep breath before continuing. "You remind us what home feels like, even when we're thousands of miles away." The crowd was completely still. Some viewers in the studio were already wiping away tears. "Sir," the letter went on, "I don't know if I'll ever make it back to the States, but I want you to know that what you do matters more than you'll ever realize. You make us remember that we're still human." Johnny's hands trembled slightly as he folded the paper. For a moment, he couldn't speak. The laughter that usually filled the room was replaced by silence so deep it felt sacred. Finally, Johnny looked into the camera and said, "Private Morris, if you're watching this, I want you to know you're the hero. We're just here to remind you that home still cares." The audience broke into applause, but it wasn't the usual cheer. It was gentle, emotional, grateful. Johnny's eyes shimmered as he tried to regain his composure, but his voice cracked when he added, "Sometimes the funniest show in the world needs a moment to remember why we smile." The band played softly in the background, and even the cameramen were seen wiping their eyes. When the show went to commercial, the studio remained silent. Nobody wanted to break the spell of that moment. The next day, the episode made headlines. Newspapers wrote, "Johnny Carson reminds America what laughter truly means." Letters poured into NBC from soldiers, families, and veterans, thanking him for reading that note aloud. Weeks later, Johnny received another message from the same soldiers' unit, saying that Private Morris had seen the broadcast and told his team, "For the first time in months, I felt seen." Sadly, months later, the show learned that Private Morris never made it home. Johnny mentioned him again on air, his voice barely holding steady, saying, "He made us laugh, even from over there." That night, millions watched. As The Tonight Show became more than just entertainment, it became a bridge between a nation and its soldiers. Years later, people still talked about the night Johnny Carson read that letter from Vietnam. It was a moment when laughter met loyalty, when television stopped being just a show and became a tribute. And for those who watched it live, it was a reminder that even in the darkest times, a few kind words could light the world. After that night, the letter from Private Daniel Morris became one of the most talked about moments in the history of The Tonight Show. Viewers wrote in from every corner of the country, saying they had cried while watching Johnny read those words. Some said it made them call their families. Others said it made them pray. Johnny Carson, known for his sharp wit and effortless humor, showed a side of himself that few had seen. A deeply human, emotional man who understood the power of connection. In the following weeks, more soldiers began sending letters to the show. Some shared stories of hope. Others simply thanked him for making them feel less alone. Johnny made a promise on air that every letter from a soldier would be read, if not aloud, then silently in his heart. One night, he even invited a veteran to sit in the audience, saying, "This seat is for every man and woman who's ever fought, so we can laugh freely." The studio applauded for nearly a minute straight. Behind the scenes, Carson told his team that the letter changed the way he saw his role as a comedian. "We don't just tell jokes," he said. "We heal people in ways we don't even realize." That moment shifted the tone of The Tonight Show forever. Whenever a military guest appeared after that, Johnny gave them extra time, always asking about their families, their lives, and their dreams for when they returned home. Many fans still recall the episode where Johnny received a medal from a Vietnam veteran's family, who said it was in honor of what he did for soldiers everywhere. Johnny didn't keep the medal. He placed it on his desk and said, "This belongs to every American who watches with love." The audience rose to their feet. Years later, during his final episodes, Johnny mentioned Private Morris again. His voice was gentle, nostalgic. "Sometimes," he said, "you don't know the impact of a small moment until it echoes through time." The crowd fell silent, once more remembering that night. In 1971, when a simple letter reminded a nation that laughter could coexist with pain. Even decades later, fans still search for that clip online, sharing it with comments like, "This was when TV had a heart." The moment lives on as a testament to the fact that Johnny Carson was more than a host. He was a voice of comfort in uncertain times. And as you're watching this story right now, remember to keep that spirit alive. Honor the legacy of those who served and the man who made them feel seen. Hit that subscribe button to keep these untold stories alive, because just like Private Morris said, even in war, we need to laugh. In the weeks following that unforgettable night, The Tonight Show received thousands of letters from viewers. Across America, each one filled with gratitude, tears, and memories. People spoke about how Johnny's reading of that soldier's note made them realize the power of words, the fragility of life, and the true cost of freedom. Even the soldiers still stationed overseas heard about the episode, passing the story from base to base, saying, "Johnny Carson remembered us." It was no longer just a late-night show. It had become a bridge between home and the battlefield. Johnny's team said he cried privately after the broadcast, telling them, "That young man spoke for thousands who never could." For weeks, Johnny would occasionally mention the letter, each time his voice growing softer, more reflective. When he received news that Private Morris never made it home, the studio once again fell silent. Johnny dedicated that night's show to him, saying, "For every laugh we share, there's someone out there fighting to protect it." The audience rose in applause, many wiping away tears. That episode would go down as one of the most emotional moments in television history. It reminded everyone watching that even amid the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, humanity still shines brightest in the quietest of moments. Years later, historians still cite that night as proof of Johnny Carson's rare gift, his ability to connect hearts beyond the screen. The clip is still shared today, a timeless reminder that words can heal, empathy can unite, and a single voice can reach across generations. So if you believe these stories should never be forgotten, make sure to subscribe and join the family that keeps classic moments like this alive forever. Years later, when people looked back on that night, they didn't just remember the soldier's letter. They remembered how Johnny Carson made the entire nation stop and feel. Television has seen countless moments of laughter, but very few moments of silence that spoke louder than words. That night, it wasn't about jokes or celebrities. It was about heart, honor, and humanity. Veterans who watched from home said they felt seen for the first time. Families who had lost loved ones in Vietnam said Johnny gave their pain a voice. Even decades later, the clip still circulates online, drawing tears from viewers who weren't even born when it happened. People comment, "This is what real television used to be." And they're right. It wasn't scripted. It wasn't planned. It was pure. Johnny once said, in an interview, "Sometimes the funniest thing you can do is just be real." And that's exactly what he did. When he read that soldier's words, he wasn't just hosting a show. He was carrying the weight of a generation's grief and gratitude. Today, that moment stands as a powerful reminder of the human stories behind every laugh, every broadcast, every spotlight. It's proof that empathy never goes out of style. So, if this story touched your heart, honor that memory. Subscribe to the channel, because these are the untold moments that deserve to live forever. Years later, that moment became one of the most powerful in television history. Johnny Carson didn't just read a letter. He shared a nation's heartbreak. The soldier's words reminded everyone watching what true courage meant and why compassion still matters. Viewers said they could feel every word, every pause, every tear. Even decades later, people still watch that clip and cry, like it happened yesterday. It wasn't just entertainment. It was humanity on display. Johnny Carson showed the world that sometimes silence speaks louder than laughter. If this story touched you, honor his memory. Subscribe for more untold legends.